Welcome back, everyone, to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. I'm super excited to have Lauren Smith on the pod today talking all about retreats, as I know a lot of you are wanting to plan them and bring this a part of your business. And I'm so happy to have her insight. Lauren, thanks so much for coming on.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm pumped. I love to podcast. It's like my little guilty pleasure, so I appreciate you asking me.
Oh my gosh, same. I actually have a huge addiction to podcasts. Like, I have to slow down because I listen to so many of them, like a ton.
Yeah, I'm the same. I like sometimes will re-listen to the same episode if they haven't launched a new episode in enough time. And it's just I love it. It's so much fun.
Yes. Okay, so a question that I ask every person who comes on the podcast is how are you currently connecting with your feminine energy?
Yeah, I think for me this is a constant work in progress. I just naturally have more of a masculine energy. I think it kind of comes with the territory of being a business owner. You think that you have to initially start in that masculine, aggressive energy. And as at least for me, my journey in entrepreneurship, I realized that my business actually becomes more aligned when I do step into the feminine. So trusting that things will happen when they happen, not needing to always have the last word, and just kind of like taking that calm step back and not always having to be the leader and letting other people lead as well, for me has like completely changed so much in my business, my team dynamic, our finances, how we profiting, like everything changes when I kind of like let go of that need to control everything, which to me kind of seems counterintuitive, but it works.
I know that's the thing about it. It's like people who have more of the fiery energy. I was just talking about this with my friend. It's like used to doing all of it, and we're worried about what our identity is going to be like, what we don't. But it's interesting that the more that you can chill and lay back, when that's your medicine, which is the hardest thing for you to do, that's actually when you get in the more results and you feel more abundant because you're living in that place of flow and ease.
hmm And I feel, at least for me, I feel so much more aligned when things, creative projects, ideas, email funnels, anything that comes up, when I lean into my feminine, I'm so much more aligned with it and it ends up being so much more successful. So I'm here for it. It's my favorite.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so I want to hear, how did you first get into retreat experiences?
Yeah, so I actually went to school to be an event planner. Straight out of high school, I went to college for it. I specialized in event planning and I worked my way up corporate doing events for the finance space here in Canada. And I always loved the strategy and the structure behind events. I always hated the corporate structure. I just don't fit into a corporate checkbox. And so back in 2018, I was trying to figure out, I had worked my way up to a really amazing role in at a bank, corner office, amazing salary at the age of 27, but I was so unhappy. I knew that I wanted to work only a couple days a week and help other people with making an impact in their business. But then I had this little birdie in the back of my head saying, you have the pension, you have the salary, you have the benefits, don't leave. And then one day I literally walked into my boss's office and I was like, I quit. And she's like, okay, what's your backup plan? I was like, I actually don't have one. I'm just going to follow my passion. And then very quickly, I started to realize that people in the entrepreneur space didn't understand in 2018 that retreats could be a viable part of their business. So I started to talk to a lot of my entrepreneur friends, and at the time I was running a women's community in Toronto, so I was super connected to the entrepreneur scene in Toronto. And a lot of my friends would always say, oh, I want to host a retreat in Bali, or my dream is to bring women together for this transformative weekend, but I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to profit. I don't know how to structure it. How do I sell tickets? Like, there were so many questions around it. And at the time, I was like, well, I have all this corporate knowledge. I know exactly how to run an event, to crush an event budget, to communicate with your attendees. I know all of that structure. So why don't I just teach you, or why don't I just do it for you? And then we can see what you think. And every single event that we've done since has pulled in a profit and everyone has sold tickets. And it's a really fun thing to see events go from what people didn't think they could do in their business to using the same corporate framework and strategy that we use to make all this money in corporate now to the entrepreneur space. So it was a very natural progression. And then the second you start talking about it and one entrepreneur tells their entrepreneur friend, and it just kind of snowballs from there. And it's been so much fun.
I love hearing that, like slow growth, kind of like everything aggregates together. Because I think a lot of times when we're making that big life transition, we think like we have to have it all together and like the plan, and like how triggering also probably like for a boss and someone that like you look up to be like, what's your plan? And like you're usually the one who has it together. Like I sometimes you do have to take that space for yourself just so you can be in that state of surrender, and then receiving the messages and being in that place where you're like, oh yeah, I'm starting to see people are coming to me. I'm starting to see themes. Like, what were some of those practices? Because there may be women who are in that stage right now where they're like, I just don't know what that is. Like, how are you able to listen, and how are you able to start to like put those puzzle pieces together? Because sometimes I think people can get really stuck in that phase.
Yeah, I think my first advice is one of my close friends now, well, she's one of my best friends now, but at the time she was in the entrepreneur space and she was a business coach. And I was very intentional at the time of who I wanted in my circle, who I wanted to lean on, who I wanted to A, support with their business, and then B, have them support me in mine. And I just very quickly acknowledged that, like, I can't do this alone. I don't want to try and do this alone. And I got that circle around me of people who were further ahead than me or on the same path as me so that we could kind of spitball these ideas past each other. And then the other thing is I've just always really believed in myself. I don't know where that came from, maybe my upbringing or my dad's and mom's belief in me, I don't know, but I just knew that I could do it. And if I didn't try, I would have regretted not trying. If I
Totally.
stayed corporate, I could have had that super sexy corporate career, but I would have always regretted not betting on myself. So it just kind of was a leap of faith and just knowing in a weird way that everything would work out.
I think that's also a testament to trusting in your gifts, and also trusting that this offer and what it could bring to others like is so important, that when it really is that desire that's within you, it's like duh, like there's no question about it. Like of course there's the beliefs and there's the hard days that come in, and it kind of blocks it, but when you really take a step back to bring awareness to it, you're like, no, I know exactly what you have, that calling. And that's why I think with entrepreneurs, it's like such a passion that they have within us, that it's like there's nothing that's going to stop me along this way. Like I know what I have to bring, and I know the value that it can bring to everyone.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was a Q&A session. And one of the questions to the host was, I currently have two audiences and two products that I want to serve. What is your strategy for getting back engaged with my social media? And she said, take it or leave it, but pick one. And the girl was like, okay, which one? And she said, well, that's for you to decide. And I think that's where so many entrepreneurs go
Yes.
wrong, is that we try and fit our business into what other people want, or we
Yes.
try and come up with a course or a product or a support system on what anyone else expects of us. But for me, I always just knew events were something I was not only really good at, but I was really passionate about. And I just kind of like went all in
Yeah.
on that. Anytime I've tried to kind of add something outside of that like passion bubble, because of what someone else wanted, whether it was like a product I tried to create, because there was a potential client in my DMs. I was like, oh my God, early on, you want to just make that sale. It
Totally.
never panned out to be something that was long term. The one thing that's been long term and consistent in my business is the events and retreat side of things. It hasn't wavered since I started my business.
That's amazing. That's exactly what I teach my clients, is that you have to I call it your unique energy type. Like you have to understand the way that your body and your mind and your spirit works, and where your gifts lie and where your expertise is. And the more that you can lean into that, then that's where your business is birthed from. And you can go through so many different programs and they'll teach you like exactly what they're doing, but you have to put it within your own template and like what really works for you. Like that's what creates authenticity. That's what creates magnetism, no matter like what business you're in. Now, I know a lot of healers who listen to this podcast, pretty much everyone I talk to is always like, I have a goal of starting a retreat. But there's so many things that can like really hold them back. And I think the number one thing that gets them held back is getting signups and having the people to come in. Because it's like, they're not short of the ideas. Like they want to have this retreat in Malibu, or they want to go to Bali. But how do you recommend leaders getting in signups, whether that's they are having like a hybrid situation, like maybe they teach yoga classes, but they also have like an Instagram page where they're getting in clients, and also for those who have smaller audiences?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions. So we always ask our clients, first off, why do you want to host this retreat? And we've had answers from, well, I really want to go to Bali, to my audience will not stop asking me about it. And I know the second that I launch it, I'm going to sell out, within a wide variety within there. And that would be my first question is get clear on why you want to host your retreat. Because if it's because you want to go to Bali, then go to Bali and leave the retreat outside of your business. Because retreats are so underestimated with how long they take, the energy it takes, the logistics behind it, the timeline. Like people think I want to go to Bali in 4 months and I want to make 100 grand. It's like, that's not possible. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yeah, you can whip that up. Is a retreat in Bali profiting 100 grand possible? Yes, it's not possible in 4 months. So I think understanding your why is the number one thing I want your community to understand. If their why is because their audience has been nailing down on them, they really want to make it happen, they are just really good at cultivating community, then my next question would be understand your community's purchasing relationship with you. So
Mm.
if they've never purchased high ticket from you before, there might be some struggle with launching a $10,000, $20,000 ticket to a retreat. If they're used to dropping 20 grand on a coaching package, a retreat will be a very easy yes. So it's kind of like that two-layered approach is figure out your why. If it's aligned with what your community is asking, then take it a step further and understand what your community is typically purchasing from you.
That is so smart because so many times, for example, like in the yoga world, we see so many retreats, like we're bombarded with them, and we're like, that sounds amazing. Like, I want to do that. And that's where the conditioning can really come into, where it's like, am I just doing that because I think that that's what everyone does when they're a yoga instructor and like it sounds cool? Or is it like that deep calling, like we were talking about? This is actually like the offering that I meant to put out in the world. And the second piece of that I love is, yeah, like what is the purchasing power of the client? Because so many times clients just kind of run their mouth and they're like, yeah, I would love to go to Bali. And like, yeah, I would love to do the retreat. Like so many times I've had people say that to me. And it's like, oh, wait, have you signed up for any of my offers? And is this actually something that you want to do? Like, or are you just saying it because it sounds really cool and great?
Yeah, it's wild. I've had people book calls with me before and they're like, I'm ready to host my first retreat, and whether they're in like the wellness or yoga space. And I will say to them, okay, amazing. Let's have this first conversation about your why. And the why is because it's been a dream of theirs. It's a Pinterest idea. It's something that they've always wanted to do. And then we get into the question about their audience and the purchasing relationship and their confidence level. And their first thing is, well, I don't have an audience. I was going to pair up with a yoga studio or another business coach. And that for me is my first pause on your retreat idea, because you need to first cultivate your own community
Yeah,
that you know inside and out. I don't think retreats are necessarily something that you can lean on someone else's community for, because it's such an intimate container that you can't do the affiliate marketing. You can't rely on someone else to sell tickets to your retreat. It just does not work. I would say pause and take a longer period of time before you decide to launch it and really know your community. That's like it comes down to understanding your people.
totally, totally. Okay, so another question or just challenges that I've seen my fellow entrepreneurs going through is how do you manage getting signups with also choosing a place and putting out a deposit? Like when you're looking into these places, they need to know how many rooms you need, for example, for accommodation. And so how do you balance knowing, okay, my goal is to get 10, but oh my God, what if it's like radio silent and it's like I'm only getting in half that amount and now I have like put down this deposit that I've got to pay for.
Yeah. So there's a calculation and a formula that you can use. We always say don't ever leave your numbers up to chance. So let's just say and there's two pillars that we'll talk about here. One is the deposit to the venue, and the other one is understanding ticket sales versus like what you might actually get. So talking about ticket sales, let's understand that your dream is to hit 10 people. You pop it into a calculator, a budget template that will say, okay, for 10 people at this ticket price, you're approximately looking at like a hard cost per person of, I don't know, let's say $2,500. You then pop your profit goal above that and you say, okay, I'm going to sell my tickets for 4 grand. That feels really good. Then once you have that like dreamy budget number, this is where people go wrong. They start to sell their retreat based on this dream number. We always say, okay, knock that number down to the 5, to let's say you only sell 50% of tickets. What is your hard cost per person? Your hard cost is going to increase to, let's say, $4,500 a person. That's what you should be selling your tickets at, so that everything else in between that is kind of gravy and like a little bit of money to play with. But we see all the time people launch at the first budget they've made at that first dreamy ticket price. And then because they haven't done any of the pre-work, they don't sell the tickets, and now they're in the hole for all this money that they didn't properly account for. So
Totally. And
yeah, that's
that's
one thing.
Yeah, it's so smart because, well, I think like if we were actually to get to like the root cause of that, you really have to think of like, do you believe the value of what you're offering and why are you trying to get it so low? Obviously, you want to give the best budget for your clients, but like really get behind those beliefs of why you feel like it's not worthy of this amount. Like how much would you honestly pay for this retreat? And I think that like the pricing thing, especially for healers and getting into spirituality, where you're offering a gifts, your own gifts, it feels so vulnerable to charge for those prices and to ask for that increased amount. But then it's so important. You have to look weeks and months ahead. I've definitely been in positions like this where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be like out of money because of this. Like I'm overextending myself when I actually could have made those edits and asked for that money more upfront in the beginning.
100%. And then in terms of the deposit that goes down to the venue, there's a couple things to consider here. The first thing I would consider is that a retreat is going to be a business expense for you if it's not properly, well, actually, no, regardless, a retreat is a business decision for you. So if you don't have the capital and the cash flow in your business to make those retreat deposits, I would strongly encourage you to think a little bit further on how this retreat could impact your business and if you actually are ready to make that jump. This is not saying that you won't make that money back, that you won't profit, but you will have to put money up front. And that can be negotiated in your contract, whether you do a 10% deposit, a 5% deposit, like that's all super negotiable. But if you don't currently have the capital in your business to make that first deposit, I would hit pause on your retreat and I would start to do a little bit more understanding of how this fits into your business. Is it long term? When can that cash flow come in? Can you do a launch? Like there's so much that you can consider, but if you don't currently have it in your account, I would not sign a contract with a venue.
Do you see businesses running solely on just retreats and being successful? Or do you find more often than not you see more of like a hybrid situation of doing programs and maybe like a membership that really builds community and then having retreats?
Yeah, retreats is so there's two ways that we see retreats. Retreats is typically an add-on to, or sorry, we see successful retreats is an add-on to an already established business where you have a typical flow of courses. Your audience understands that you're going to launch something. They understand that like sales cycle within your business. Retreats are successful for people whose audiences totally understand that. And then the second area that we see retreats be successful is for retreat hosts that host multiple retreats per year, but more from an event planner perspective. So like you run a retreat agency. I haven't currently seen retreats be successful on an ongoing basis for someone who solely relies on retreats because it is such a cash flow dependent place. You want to rely on other income, and the retreat is a benefit to your business.
Totally. That's how I see it too. It's kind of like the cherry on top where, for example, if you have like a virtual community, like bringing everyone all together, but in reality, like, you're not going to be able to do that regularly. I mean, I guess it really depends on your audience base and pulling from these different pools, but yeah, it's kind of like just, oh, wow, we have that initial like coming together and it builds in so many much stronger relationships because of that.
Yeah, and I think too in a post-pandemic world, everyone's craving connection. So if you do have an online community and you do have a course or a membership or a podcast or something where you're currently online connecting with your community, it's a very easy transition to bring them to an in-person experience. But if you don't currently have that, it's a little bit more difficult to cultivate that desire to connect in person.
Totally. When you're thinking about certain elements of putting together a retreat, like where should I host the retreat? Or what is the best time for people to go on retreats? How do you help clients with these questions?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So it really depends on your business and your busy versus not busy season. We always say give yourself a year to launch, plan, and execute a retreat because you want to start to think about little things like giving your audience payment plans and then having that last fund hit your bank account at least 6 days before the event. So let's say you're doing your event in January, you want to collect your last payment by November, but if you want to have a 6-month payment plan, then I don't know what 6 months before that is, but you're looking at like a spring launch, but then you want to start planning it in January. So giving yourself that time is super important, but then also understanding how does it fit into the other launches in your business? If you're doing a course intake or a new membership launch or another season of your podcast, you don't want to be doing that at the same time that you're launching your retreat because you don't want to split your energy. So starting to focus on, let's look at your business from a year perspective and see when it fits into your business. And then in terms of traveling, it's really going to depend on location that you choose. If you pick the Caribbean or if you pick somewhere in the States or somewhere in Canada, like it's really going to depend, or Europe, on the seasons of those different destinations. And then you just do the work back from there.
Totally. I love doing that based on so often we hear like, oh, what do you think is the best time for my audience? Like, of course they want to take in consideration things like spring break and if they have more like a mom clientele. But I love first coming in from like, what is you as the CEO, what's going to be most beneficial because that's the energy that you're putting out and you're going to have to show up really consistently trying to market and sell and launch a retreat, which is a lot of work for those who have done that on the back end. And the more that you can show up all bright and bushy tailed for it, the more traction you're going to get.
Yeah, and then also look at the sales psychology too. Like, are people really, at least for us, where I'm located in Toronto, we get like 4 months of beautiful weather a year. So in May, June, July, August, September, okay, maybe five. We're not super successful when it comes to selling things in those months because everyone's taking the Friday off, they're having a boozy lunch, they're off with their kids, they're not really in that purchasing mindset. September, you can start to play in on the back to school, the let's get refocused on your business kind of vibe. But our best sales months that we see for retreats are September, like end of September, October, and November. And then again, February and March, because you want to start to think about what's also happening in everyone's lives, like back to school, Christmas break, March break, or spring break you guys have in the States. January, no one's purchasing anything because they've just seen their credit card statements from the holiday season. There's just so much psychology to think about when it comes to launching your retreat. So there has to be some grace given to your community and a really thoughtful strategy. If you're launching for 4 months in a row on your course and then you go to launch a retreat, people will have that launch fatigue, and not just the host, but also the people buying tickets. So there's just so much to think about.
I would love to hear what are some success stories that your clients have had with hosting retreats that you can share and inspire our community with.
Yeah, we've had a couple of really fun ones. So we had one who, on her first retreat, she profited 6 figures because she was so dialed in on the offer and the community. And it was her first one, and she knew that
Oh,
her community was craving a retreat. And we matched it up with, okay, what are they looking for? Do we want to take them on an adventure? Do we want to take them to another place? Where do we want to take them? We got super clear on, nope, it's their first connection after COVID. They want high end, they want to connect with you, and they want to go really tight with their community. So we curated the experience for that. Well, then their next retreat, they wanted to do a little bit more of an adventure. And she came to us and she's like, you guys pick, you pitch me an idea and let's go from there. And we pitched an idea that was so outside of the first one that it was so different that also too the format was a bit different. And she had another, I think she 50 plus $60,000 profit on that retreat because it was super aligned with her audience.
yeah.
That I think is one of my favorite success stories. And then seeing other ones where they have a smaller audience and those also selling out and those kind of having really fun experiences. But I think that one is my favorite success story.
I love that so much. Do you have any idea, just so people can kind of like gauge and understand like what her audience size was and what some of her offers were that were able to make that offer so clear for them?
Yeah, I think her audience at the time was like 70K on Instagram. And her offers were anything from a 1 day event that was $600 to a 12 months coaching package that's like 25,000. So she kind of had a range of things within there. She also has a podcast. She's just incredible at cultivating community, and she's that type of person where even as someone that works with her, we just want to be around her all the time. Like she has that
Yes.
energy. She's very authentic, which I think is super important in the retreat space.
I love all of that. Yeah, I think the expertise of being a retreat leader is like so different too. Like literally being like the leader of the pack. And then I picture like a lot of like Gemini energy, like being like just an extreme networker and that person that's just like friends with everyone.
Yeah, and also just so grounding. Like the other thing to think about with retreats is what energy are you showing up with? Like, and it, depending on the content that you're teaching, a lot of retreats, at least that we work on, are very vulnerable containers. So people come there looking for guidance. They come there looking for transformation, and it's up to the retreat leader and the retreat host to hold that space and to hold that energy. And if you can't hold that from the second that they land on your sales page to the second that they leave your retreat, it has to be consistent. You can't be all over the place with your energy, and it takes a very dialed in person to to launch and execute a successful six-figure retreat.
Totally. What do you feel is the biggest fault that happens when someone's in the retreat planning phase of what makes a successful retreat, and what feels like, oh, we kind of missed the mark there?
Inconsistency and doing it without a plan. So understanding that retreats can take the year to plan, being very intentional on that. So when are you launching tickets? At what price point? What's the energy going to be like when you show up in those spaces? How are your attendees being communicated to? Like we do everything. The bulk of our work happens in the first 6 weeks of working on your retreat because everything is just done. Emails are templated, automations are set up, like all that stuff is done. And where I see people go wrong is when they launch a retreat 20 minutes after they had the idea, and then they get launch fatigue, they burn out, people aren't excited about it, and then they just kind of give up on the idea of hosting this retreat because no one purchased in the first 20 minutes of the tickets going live. So it's a long game. It takes a lot of energy, but they can be very lucrative for your business.
I love that. I've definitely been in that position before too. And it's interesting you say you burn out from it, because if you were just to take that extra time, which no one wants to do, but when you plan and when you strategize, it helps you to like really focus your energy, like you're saying, so that you can actually like meet these markers and meet these goals. When you think about a retreat, it feels like it could be like really easy and simple. And like, I feel like once you're at the retreat, at least as like a facilitator, it is that ease. But especially with all like the marketing, the selling approach that goes into it, that's what's going to make you feel like everything flows even more easeful.
Yeah, and that's like when you launch it or when you're hosting a retreat, you want to be it to be easeful. You want to be in a flow. You want to be like in your creative zone of genius. But where a lot of people go wrong is they don't think about like, okay, what happens if dot dot dot. So do you have the waiver sign set up? Do you have emergency contact? Do you have a backup in destination if something happens? Like that is a lot of where people don't think. They're like, I'm just gonna book a really pretty Airbnb and I'm going to send one email out before and it's gonna be amazing. And it's like, okay, I hope it is. Like, I genuinely hope that works for you. We've never seen that work. There's so much more that has to go into it to allow you to be in your zone on site. And that's, I think, the messaging that we want to share is like retreats don't take 20 minutes to plan. They actually can take over your entire life. And they don't have to if you follow a certain strategy and you follow a certain like framework to kind of get you there.
And I feel like that just goes back to intention. Like, do you really want to do this retreat? Because it does require that amount of time and commitment. And this is truly something that you feel is an offering that your audience wants and that you're excited about, then you're going to be willing to put that in. But if not, you're like, ugh, no, this is like way too much for me.
Yeah, and it'll happen quickly. You'll get overwhelmed like within the first week. So I'm not saying they're not possible. I want retreats to be possible for everybody, but I just want people to be really smart about them.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love this conversation. The whole time I've been wanting to ask you, and I keep on forgetting. Do you know human design?
I do, and I always forget what I am.
Oh, I'm so curious because it sounds like you have like a really observant perspective, but sometimes I always think people are projectors because I'm a projector.
Yeah, I don't actually think I am a projector. I think everyone thinks I'm a projector, and I'm like, I'm actually not a
Because you
projector,
just
but
have this like, so projectors are really good at seeing like the bigger picture,
yeah.
and kind of like being observant. And so that's kind of why that kind of pegged me as that.
Yeah, I wonder, I could probably, oh wait, I think I know what I am. I'll think about it and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's just funny. We always talk about that. Do you know your sun, moon, or rising?
No, I did it once and I can't remember. I'm a Leo, if that makes a difference.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. I'm a Leo too. I tend to attract a lot of Leos.
Yeah, and I'm like a true Leo. It's kind of scary. If you like look through the chart of all the things, I'm very true to my Leo.
I love that so much.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, conversation has been so amazing. I love what you're doing, and I know you kind of already spoke how you work with your clients, and so I'd love you to share more with our community and how they can work with you, and if they have a retreat, what's that look like?
Yeah, so we do one-on-one planning for our clients. We are actually currently sold out until the halfway through 2025, which means we are not taking or planning any retreats within that time. We just fully have our calendars booked with it, which is so cool. But if people want our help, we do have a membership where you can come in, use our framework, understand how to like profit your retreat, figure out your community, do all that type of stuff. You get me one-on-one inside your business, looking at your retreat It's an online community, so you can literally DM me and I will answer your questions. I'll film a Loom, I'll send it back, and it will really take you through like having a retreat idea, understanding if that retreat idea is feasible for your business, and then from there, understanding what those next steps are, how to profit, execute. We give you a template for everything. We give you like a waiver template to make sure you're fully protected and all that type of stuff. So that's our membership, and we're kind of obsessed with it.
That sounds literally incredible. I'll have that linked in the show notes so everyone can check out Lauren, follow her on Instagram. And thank you just so much for your wisdom. I think this is going to be so entirely helpful for so many healers who are looking to
Of
run retreat.
course. Thank you for having me. I could talk about this all day.
I know, so fun. Maybe we'll have to have you on the podcast back again.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening.